Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're going deep, really deep into a personal letter written by a son to his mother.
Hmm. And it's set against the backdrop of, a very specific event, the 2020 Polish presidential election.
A very politically charged time, right?
Hmm.
Especially when it came to LGBTQ plus rights, which were, well, a major point of contention.
Absolutely. I mean, the political rhetoric surrounding this issue was really intense.
And that's what makes this letter so fascinating. It's like we're getting a glimpse to how these larger political forces can impact, well, personal lives, individual stories.
Exactly. We often talk about political events in a very abstract way, but this letter brings it all down to earth. It shows us how real people are grappling with these issues.
So true. And what's even more interesting is that the son in this letter is trying to make his mother, well, understand how all of this is shaping his reality.
Yeah. And it's not just about present day politics. He also brings in historical parallels like the Holocaust and how language can be used to dehumanize.
Pretty heavy stuff.
It really is. And to understand the weight of what he's saying, we need to remember just how divisive this particular election was in Poland.
Right, right. LGBTQ plus rights were like front and center.
And the incumbent president at the time, Andrzej Duda, had made some pretty inflammatory statements that a lot of people saw as homophobic.
So this son is writing within a context where his identity is being directly politicized, even demonized.
Yeah, and that adds a whole other layer of complexity to his letter.
Okay, so let's get into the letter itself. We'll read some excerpts, and I'm really curious to hear your thoughts as we go along.
Sounds good.
Dear Mom, for a long time I have wanted to write this letter to you, and for a long time I have wanted to muster at least a little courage to tell you who I am and what I feel. But it has always been difficult for me to put it into the right words to convey it. It is so painful for me. I don't even know where to start, how to develop, how to end. Forgive me for the letter being so long, but when you understand why I am writing, I hope you will also understand that it could not have been shorter.
Wow. Right from the start, you can feel his struggle.
Yeah, he's clearly wrestling with something big.
This hesitancy, this search for the right words, it really speaks to the weight of societal expectations and the fear of rejection, especially from loved ones.
Definitely. He goes on to include this really powerful quote from actors Edita Duda Olaczewska. And it's like he's trying to illustrate the power of language and how it can be used to, well, manipulate and even incite violence. It's a pretty stark comparison to what was happening in Poland at the time.
Right.
Read carefully the entry of actress Edita Duda Olaczewska, which will outline at the beginning what I and all of us have to face. If Adolf Hitler, before World War II, had said, "Listen, Germanic nation, I don't like Jews. I propose to burn 4-year-old Esterka with her 11-year-old brother, parents, and grandmother in the barn. I will add that there are so many Jews that I hate it would be good to organize concentration camps. We will be able to do whatever we want with them. You can beat, torture, rape. We will separate husbands from wives and children. We will gas women with children. We'll do the same to men when they work for us for a while. They will work and watch their children and wives enter the gas chamber and leave dead on carts and wheelbarrows. We will take their jewelry, houses, whatever they have. We will tear out the gold teeth of the old people, and then we will burn them in special furnaces for burning people." If he had said so, the Germans would probably have thought, and rightly so, that they were dealing with a monster, with a psychopath. He would be immediately separated from society. At best, he would end up in an insane asylum. But Hitler spoke of Jews differently. He didn't say Esther Volomen, he said hidden forces, the Jewish question, Bolshevik plague, threat to humanity, Jewry, danger to the German nation. People who remember the smell of burnt bodies are still alive, but others are already living who use words that crackle in their ears like a match rubbing against the scratch.
Wow, that's a lot to take in.
It really is.
But it's so effective in highlighting how language can be used, to dehumanize entire groups of people.
Right. It's like he's saying, Mom, pay attention to the words being used. They're not harmless.
It feels like a warning, a call to recognize the danger of certain types of rhetoric. Like history could repeat itself if we're not careful.
Yeah. And what's chilling is that it connects to a broader phenomenon, this propaganda model,
Yeah.
where media and political figures can influence public perception,
Yeah.
by framing information in a certain way,
Yeah.
using emotionally charged language.
Exactly. And we've seen this throughout history, right? I mean, this tactic is not new.
And the son is, he's drawing a direct line between the tactics used by the Nazis,
Yeah.
like in that quote, and the rhetoric being used against LGBTQ plus individuals in Poland at the time.
Yeah, and he's doing it very deliberately. He wants his mother to see those parallels, to understand the potential consequences of unchecked hate speech.
Especially given Poland's history with the Holocaust. I mean, that memory is it's deeply ingrained in the Polish consciousness.
Absolutely. And he's leveraging that shared history to make his point. He's essentially saying, look what happened when we allowed this kind of language to go unchecked. We can't let that happen again.
And he gets even more specific, referencing the words of President Duda himself.
Yeah.
Very strong and sad words that describe in a simple and pictorial way what we are witnessing today. So far, the word Nazism has been associated with World War II, history, books, something distant and long forgotten. Especially today, before this year's presidential election, the current president, Andrzej Duda, resurrected the demons of a terrible past. In a moment, I will quote his shameful words, but first I would like to focus on something else. As you may know, Nazism, sometimes also referred to as Hitlerism, is an anti-human ideology that has gone down in history as the most terrible. It was because of Nazism that the greatest crimes against innocent people were committed during World War II. And so Andrzej Duda recently baptized these demons of evil as the head of state, lent them his voice, and allowed them to ruthlessly take over the innocent hearts and minds of people. And although I have been observing the situation for 10 years, and I know that it was not better at all, now hatred is pouring out on me in streams from television, radio, the internet, and newspapers 24 hours a day, every day.
Demons. He uses that word demons. It's a really strong word, right? It evokes this sense of primal fear, like something dark and dangerous is being unleashed.
It's powerful. And he's not just talking about abstract concepts here. He's referencing specific things that Duda said, statements that, that a lot of people found deeply offensive.
Yeah, and the fact that these words are coming from the president, a figure of authority, that makes them even more potent, you know?
Right. It's not just some random person on the street saying this stuff. It's the president of Poland.
And in social psychology, we talk about the power of the situation, you know? People in positions of authority, they can have a huge impact on others, especially when they tap into pre-existing prejudices or fears.
So what exactly did Duda say that caused such a strong reaction?
Yeah, let's hear it.
The words of President Andrzej Duda about LGBT, which resonated loudly in the world media, were spoken in a meeting with the inhabitants of Burzek. Duda assessed LGBT in this way. Throughout the communist period, children were forced into communist ideology in schools. It was Bolshevism. Today, they are also trying to impose ideology on us and our children, only a different, completely new one. This is such a neo-Bolshevism. We are trying to be convinced that these are people, but this is simply an ideology. That same day, Law and Justice MP Przemysław Czarnek said on TVP, "Let us defend the family from this kind of corruption, depravity, absolutely immoral behavior. Let us defend ourselves from LGBT ideology and stop listening to these idiocies about some human rights or some equality. These people are not equal to normal people, and let's end this discussion."
So he's calling LGBTQ plus identity and ideology, not people. And then his party member goes even further, saying LGBTQ plus people aren't normal. It's just dehumanizing.
And that kind of language, well, it is not new in political discourse. It's a tactic, right? Creating an outgroup, an enemy.
Right. And by labeling LGBTQ plus individuals as this dangerous ideology, Dude is essentially framing them as a threat to traditional values. And that kind of rhetoric, it can be incredibly damaging because it creates a climate of intolerance, making it easier to justify discrimination.
And that's where the son's fear starts to make even more sense. He's seeing himself being demonized by those in power.
Right. He's experiencing what we call minority stress. It's the chronic stress that members of stigmatized groups experience, and it can manifest in all sorts of ways: anxiety, depression, even physical health problems. And when that stress is combined with hateful rhetoric from people in power, it can be devastating.
So he's not just reacting to some abstract political ideas. He's experiencing a very real threat to his well-being.
Exactly. And that fear, it's going to shape everything else he says in this letter.
We've seen how he's connecting the personal and the political, drawing those chilling parallels between what happened during the Nazi era and the rhetoric being used against LGBTQ plus people today.
Mm-hmm.
And he's making it clear how dangerous this rhetoric can be, how it can incite violence and lead to, to deadly consequences.
Yeah, he's really laying the groundwork.
And next time, we'll delve even deeper into the letter, exploring his plea for his mother's understanding and acceptance.
I'm ready when you are. It's really striking, you know, how he uses that image of demons being resurrected. It speaks to this this deep-seated fear, right? This fear that history might be repeating itself, and those in power are, almost exploiting those historical traumas for their own gain.
Yeah, it's like he's watching this nightmare unfold, and he's desperate to wake his mother up before it's too late. And to do that, he starts sharing these really powerful stories, like testimonies from mothers who have experienced the devastating consequences of this intolerance firsthand.
Right. And these aren't just anecdotal stories, right? They point to a much bigger issue, the silencing of LGBTQ plus voices and this failure to address the very real harm that homophobia causes.
Absolutely. And he starts by quoting Helena Bidro, the mother of Robert Bidro,
Okay.
who's a prominent LGBTQ plus activist and politician in Poland. Evil words hurt more than fists and spitting. Evil words kill. Helena Bidro, mother of Robert Bidro, addressed Andrzej Duda at a conference in front of the presidential palace, who, together with other mothers of LGBT people, wanted to protest against the president's words. I cannot be silent when someone hurts my child. Mr. President, it is not easy to stand in this place and say what we want to tell you today. I am here with other women, with other mothers, to tell you that what you say about our children hurts and hurts us terribly. It also hurts my son, just like other children whose parents we are. And politicians take away their humanity. These are not only our sons, daughters, but often also brothers and sisters, members of our families, our friends and acquaintances. Mr. President, we are afraid for our children. We don't want to lose them just because someone, having decided that they are not human, is baiting them, beating them, killing them, or leading them to suicide, because too often this is what the life of our children looks like in today's Poland. Such harm remains for life, and sometimes it is too great for the lives of some of our sons and daughters. Evil words hurt more than fists and spitting. Evil words kill. I have often feared for my son's life, for example, when I learned that he wanted to take his own life because he had no strength to fight contempt and humiliation. I never want to know again what the mother of Dominic from Bu feels, who hanged himself on shoelaces because he couldn't stand it, or Wiktor from Warsaw, who threw himself under a subway train because there was no way to effectively stand up for him. At such moments, when I am so scared, I wonder what a mother feels like who has lost a child, whose child will never smile again and will not say, "Mom, I love you." He won't say that because he's gone, because he took his own life. My heart breaks when I think how many such children, such mothers there are. Mr. President, you say that people like my son are not people because they do not love like you and that this is bad. But when I look at my son, I don't see evil. I see his smile, sometimes sadness. I know he wants to be happy like any human being. But I want my child to be happy like everyone else in the world. On behalf of many mothers, I ask you not to hurt other people, not to hurt our children. People look at you and listen to you. As the head of state, you have the power to do bad things and good things. You have the power to change, so as a mother, I ask you very much to stop. Our daughters and sons are people. They are our children whom we love, and we can no longer look at their suffering. Therefore, on behalf of many mothers, I ask you, please, Mr. President, do what is the command of every human being. Stand on the side of good.
That phrase, evil words kill, it's a stark reminder that words have consequences. They can incite violence, destroy lives, push people to take their own lives.
It's heavy stuff.
Yeah.
And she's not just, lamenting the situation. She's directly addressing those in power, holding them accountable.
Exactly. She's saying you have the power to change things, to choose a different path. It's a powerful challenge, a plea for them to use their platforms for good, to promote understanding and acceptance.
And to further emphasize this point, he includes another quote from Aneta Solwiska,
Yeah.
another mother of an LGBTQ plus person. It's like he's creating this chorus of voices,
Yeah.
all echoing the same message of fear and desperation.
Mm.
Another mother, Aneta Solwiska, also spoke. I think my son is a wonderful person. I am proud of him, and I am here because the cup of bitterness has overflowed. There are about 2 million non-heteronormative people in Poland. Each of them has a mother, father, siblings, family, friends. There are several million of us, and we will not allow our loved ones, our children, to be hurt. I wanted to address all parents who are now raising small, several-year-old children. You don't know, my dears, whether your children will grow up to be heterosexual or homosexual. What will you tell them in a dozen or so years when they're not treated like human beings in this country? What will you tell them? That you didn't fight for their future. Maybe the time to fight is now. Let's not allow people to bait each other. Let's tolerate everyone because we are all equal. And one more word to the president and the ruling party. If because of what happened last week, at least one child commits suicide, then you have blood on your hands.
She's drawing a direct line,
Mm.
between their words and the potential for real tragedy. Like she's saying, if even one more child takes their own life because of this hate, you will be held responsible.
Yeah, and she also appeals to this sense of shared humanity, right? She's reminding everyone that, well, that LGBTQ plus individuals aren't some abstract group. They're sons, daughters, siblings, friends. They're part of our families, our communities.
It's a good point. We tend to dehumanize people when we see them as different from us, as other. But she's bringing it back to that common ground, you know? We all have loved ones. We all want them to be safe and happy.
Exactly. And she's challenging this idea that it's just about tolerance. She's calling for something much deeper, like acceptance, understanding, recognizing everyone's inherent dignity.
Right, right. It's not enough to just tolerate someone. You have to actually see them, value them.
And then, if these mothers' testimonies weren't powerful enough, he shares the story of Mika, this young gay man who took his own life because of the hate and intolerance he faced.
Oh, wow.
This is Mijeshin. He committed suicide a few days ago. He was gay, a beautiful and sensitive boy who still had his whole life ahead of him. He hanged himself on a tree in the backyard garden. He killed himself because he couldn't stand the violence and cruel words of Polish politicians and bishops. He couldn't handle the exclusion. He's been harassed for a long time. His life was destroyed. To avoid suffering, he was anesthetized with sedatives. Finally, he took his own life. Because his mother enrolled him in a Catholic middle school, she can't forgive herself. There he was called Fags. When she went to the class teacher and the principal, she heard, "Please do something with your son, because maybe there's something wrong with him." So she went to the dean. She said that her son was being called a pervert at school. The dean told my mother, "Maybe there's a grain of truth in it, so talk to your son as soon as possible." Mika's mother. Every day I ask myself the question, what kind of country is it where you have to die to be happy? If Mikish had heard from teachers in primary school that any orientation is normal, he would be alive today. I would like my son's death not to be in vain. He committed suicide on June 1st, 2020 at 2:30 p.m. My world is over. God may forgive those who led him to his death. I believe that you don't take any things that our hearts to the other side. One takes our deeds and stands before God, and they will surely be judged too, and may God forgive them, because I cannot. I really can't. Everything that today's politicians do, headed by our president, is a return to the terrifying fascist past. These are the same mechanisms. Quote, inciting, humiliating, intimidating, excluding are the production of suicides. This is nothing more than killing people with white gloves. Hatred is the mother of the Holocaust and the foundation on which Auschwitz was built. We cannot allow this to happen a second time.
The way he describes Miko's mother's grief, her guilt, it's really heartbreaking. And then the response of the school and the church, it's just disturbing. Like, instead of offering support, they basically blamed the victim.
Yeah, it speaks to this larger issue of institutional homophobia, right? Where schools and religious institutions, often because of prejudice or outdated beliefs, fail to create a safe and supportive environment for LGBTQ plus youth. And, well, as we see in Mika's case, it can have devastating consequences.
Yeah, it's like he was failed by the very institutions that were supposed to, protect and nurture him. It's tragic.
And sadly, Mika's story isn't unique. This pattern, it repeats itself over and over again. LGBTQ plus youth being bullied, harassed, made to feel like they're somehow broken or wrong just for being who they are.
And this brings us to another story, another tragic loss.
Yeah. This is 14-year-old Dominic from Bidu. He hanged himself on shoelaces. Dominic left a dramatic letter to his mother in which he apologized for his death and argued that he was nobody. The teenager was a victim of peers who called him fags and wimps because he liked to wear skinny jeans and style his hair. Despite the fact that he reported it to teachers many times, he was effectively and systematically ignored. Quote, "These stories were certainly not broadcast on TVP, but they should shake Poland and trigger political and social tornadoes. If those who have blood on their hands do not suffer any, even political consequences, there will be no salvation for Poles. Poland will fall and fall into a black abyss from which there is no turning back. Young people will kill themselves."
This sense of hopelessness, right? The idea that things might not change, it's really hard to hear.
It is. It's a feeling that a lot of marginalized groups experience when they feel, unseen, unheard. And he's right. These stories often don't get the attention they deserve, especially when the media is dominated by certain narratives or controlled by political agendas.
It's like a vicious cycle, right? The lack of visibility allows these tragedies to continue,
Right.
and the silence only amplifies the feeling of isolation and despair.
Yeah, exactly. It's like if we don't talk about it, if we don't acknowledge it, then it didn't happen. And that's just not true. These stories need to be told.
He's making a plea here, you know? a plea for people to pay attention, to demand accountability. He's saying that if we don't learn from these tragedies, if we don't actively work to create a more just and compassionate world, then we're complicit in the suffering.
And to really drive this point home, he doesn't just focus on Poland. He shares the story of Bobby Griffith, this American teenager who took his own life because of homophobia. He even includes a quote from the film Prayers for Bobby, where Bobby's mother talks about her regret, her regret for not accepting her son. Bobby Griffith is another American boy who committed suicide because of homophobia. The film, Prayers for Bobby, was based on his story. Quote from the film. When my son told me he was gay, my world fell apart. I did everything I could to cure him of this disease. 8 months ago, my son jumped off a bridge. He killed himself. I deeply regret my lack of knowledge about gays and lesbians. Now I know that everything I was taught was bigotry and dehumanizing slander. If I had expanded my knowledge of what I was told, if I had listened to my son when he opened his heart to me, I would not stand before you today full of regret. I believe God liked Bobby's gentle and loving nature. In God's eyes, only love and goodness count. I didn't know that every time I repeated about the eternal damnation of gays, I was talking about Bobby. When I reminded of illness, perversion, and danger to our children, I destroyed his self-esteem and self-esteem. Finally, his spirit broke and there was no help for him. It was not God's will that Bobby climbed onto the railing of the bridge over the highway and jumped onto the wheels of a truck that killed him on the spot. Bobby's death was a direct consequence of his parents' ignorance and fear of the word gay. He wanted to be a writer. No one should have taken away his hope and dreams, but it did. Somewhere in your congregations, there are children like Bobby. Without your knowledge, they listen to your amen. Their prayers offered to God for understanding, acceptance, and your love. But your hatred, ignorance, and fear of the word gay will silence their prayers. Before you repeat amen at home and in your place of worship, think about it. Remember the child is listening.
It's heartbreaking how these stories, they transcend borders, cultures. It shows that homophobia is not just a Polish problem, right? It's a global issue. It's a human issue.
Yeah. And by including Bobby's story, he's subtly challenging any notion his mother might have that that this is just a foreign problem, something that doesn't exist in Poland.
Right. He's like, Mom, this could happen here. This could happen to us.
Exactly. He's personalizing the issue, making it impossible for her to ignore or dismiss.
And then he brings in the words of Marian Tursky, a Polish historian and Holocaust survivor, to really underscore the danger of remaining silent in the face of discrimination.
Right, right.
Powerful choice.
Marian Tursky, a Polish historian imprisoned in the German Nazi extermination camp Auschwitz-Birkenau, said in January this year, "Do not be indifferent when any minority is discriminated against. The essence of democracy is that the majority rules, but democracy is based on the fact that the rights of minorities must be protected. Do not be indifferent when any authority violates existing social contracts. Be faithful to the commandment, the 11th commandment. Do not be indifferent. Because if you are, you won't even look around when on your descendants, some Auschwitz will suddenly fall from the sky."
It's a reminder that we can't be bystanders when it comes to injustice, Silence equals complicity.
It's powerful. And he's drawing a very direct connection between the rise of Nazism and the dangers of indifference. He's saying, look, this is how it starts. It starts with words, with prejudice, with the dehumanization of an other. And if we don't speak out against it, it can escalate into something truly horrific.
Yeah, he's invoking the memory of the Holocaust to warn against complacency, to remind us that we have a responsibility, to stand up for what's right, to speak out against injustice, to protect the vulnerable.
And he's not just relying on historical figures to make his point. He also brings in the work of Brene Brown, who's an American researcher, author, and she focuses on things like vulnerability, courage, and shame.
Interesting.
Brene Brown, an American writer, wrote, "We can never tolerate dehumanization, the main instrument of violence that has been used in every genocide recorded in the history of history."
I like how he's weaving together, these historical examples, these contemporary voices, even research to build his argument.
Yeah, he's not just throwing out random opinions, right? He's creating this multi-layered, a tapestry of evidence.
It's a really effective strategy. And by citing Brene Brown, he's tapping into this broader conversation about the importance of empathy, vulnerability, connection.
Right, right. He's saying, Mom, this isn't just about politics. It's about how we treat each other as human beings.
Exactly. He's trying to elevate the conversation, to appeal to something deeper, something more universal.
And then, just when you think it can't get any more personal, he brings it all back to their relationship, talking about how the political climate has impacted even their ability to communicate with each other.
Ooh, that's interesting. Let's hear it.
Have you noticed that we often end up arguing about politics? It hurts even more that the PS Party's television message made it impossible for us to even talk to each other freely about us, about our needs, about our country. Why did we make it so that instead of one common homeland, today we have two different, completely opposite ones?
It's a poignant reminder, isn't it, that these issues, they're not just theoretical. They have real world consequences, on our personal lives, our relationships.
Yeah, he's essentially saying, Mom, this isn't just about politics. It's affecting our relationship, our ability to connect as mother and son.
Exactly. He's highlighting the personal toll of political division, how it can create these barriers between us and prevent us from having those meaningful conversations.
And it's this plea for connection that leads us to the next part of the letter, where he finally reveals the truth about himself, this truth that he's been carrying for years.
And it's here that the stakes get even higher, right? Because he's not just asking her to understand the political climate. He's asking her to understand him, to accept him for who he is.
Yeah, it's a pivotal moment in the letter, for sure. We'll dive into that. We'll dive into that next time.
It's really interesting, how he sets the stage for this reveal. Like after highlighting all the political stuff, the dangers of intolerance and everything, he kind of shifts gears and starts appealing to their shared history, to the love they've always had.
Yeah, it's subtle, but it's a brilliant strategy. He's reminding her of the support she's always shown him, almost like he's framing this revelation as a continuation of that trust.
Yeah, exactly. It's like he's saying, Mom, remember how you've always loved and supported me?
Right.
Well, this is part of that. This is part of who I am.
Okay, so let's hear it. Let's hear this part of the letter. I know you want the best for me. You know that I want this for you too, so please give me a few moments. You know that everything I do comes from my love. I am so happy you are. Thank you for the fact that I can exist thanks to you too. You always supported me. You were my guardian angel. Today, let me repay you for all of this. All I need is your trust. I know you would do everything possible to make your child happy. So take a look at my choice. Don't reject it just because your choice seems right to you. I respect that. But please, before you cast your vote on July 12th, consider my words in this letter. Calmly, without emotion, without anger. I believe that if Poland chooses Duda now, it will be too late to fix his mistakes. That's why I cried 2 weeks ago when I asked you to think about your choice.
He's being so vulnerable here, expressing his love, his gratitude, but also acknowledging that there might be disagreement,
It's delicate. Like he's walking this tightrope between asking for understanding and demanding agreement.
Right. He's not saying you have to agree with me, but he is saying, please try to see where I'm coming from.
And then this is it. This is the moment he's been building towards.
Okay.
Mom, I'm scared. In Poland, the language of hatred and contempt is beginning to be spoken, as I mentioned earlier. I'm afraid because people stop respecting each other and threaten others just because someone put up a poster on their fence that shouldn't be there, according to him. Mom, trust me, life in a tolerant and smiling Poland will be better than in a Poland full of contempt and threats.
Mom, I'm scared. Those 3 words, it's a punch to the gut.
Yeah, it's a stark reminder that this isn't just a political debate. For some people, it's a matter of life and death.
And he's connecting his fear directly to the political climate, to the things that people in power are saying. Yeah. And that's what makes this letter so powerful. It's not just about abstract ideologies. It's about a real threat.
Right. He's scared for his safety. And then he takes it even further, talking about the pain of exclusion and how it's affected him personally. Mom, exclusion hurts. Trust me, times have changed. You brought me up beautifully. Thank you for that. Look who I am. Look how much I want to learn new things, how much joy I have in being able to develop. See how far I've come with your help. See how much my good disposition is noticed, appreciated, and respected everywhere. See that I've never taken any drugs, alcohol, cigarettes, and someone dares to call me an evil and immoral non-human.
He's trying to counter those stereotypes, right? The negative things that are being said about LGBTQ plus people.
Right. He's like, Mom, look at me. Look at the person I am.
Don't let those hateful words define me.
Yeah. He's fighting for his humanity. And then he brings it back to words having power, how they can hurt, how they can even kill. Please remember that lack of acceptance and hatred can lead to death. Ordinary words of contempt hurt me and others like a knife, and sometimes lead to taking one's own life. Rejected, intolerant people leave in silence. Their silent screams are not heard.
It's a powerful reminder, isn't it, about the consequences of intolerance.
Yeah, he's talking about emotional abuse, right? Where Words are used to control or manipulate someone, to make them feel small.
Right, right. And the effects of that can be just as damaging as physical abuse. Low self-esteem, anxiety, depression, even suicidal thoughts.
And it's that silent suffering, that can be the most heartbreaking. The people who don't have the support to speak out, who internalize all that hate and blame themselves.
It's why it's so important to create spaces where people feel safe to share their stories, to connect with others who understand.
Yeah. And he then goes on to describe this, this future he hopes for, a life where he can be himself, where he can be loved and accepted for who he is.
Let's hear it.
I want to be able to choose freely in the future, take responsibility for myself and be happy. I want to be able to love and be loved. I want to feel safe and free. I want to face the challenges on my way with a smile and my head held high, and not to fear meandering through the labyrinths established by conservative extremists of the right, a set of threats, and under the burden of guilt that strip dignity and take away independence.
It's a beautiful vision, isn't it? It speaks to the human spirit's resilience, its ability to find hope even in the darkest of times.
It does, and it highlights this fundamental human need. The need to belong, to be accepted, to live authentically.
Without fear.
Yeah. But then he brings it back to the present, back to the political reality he's facing. Mom, this is really not about the current president breaking the Constitution. It's not about the fact that he is dependent on the party that promoted him to this position. I don't care about his fear of superiors, about the fact that he can't make independent decisions, about the fact that I am often ashamed when I listen to him. It's not about the fact that he puts populism on a pedestal, which we should bury underground with fear and shame, but that's not the point either. It's about the man, about each of us, about you, about me. The president of our country should be for everyone, not just for the chosen ones. I think everyone would be for Duda, even me. I believe he has good and interesting ideas. But unfortunately, through his rhetoric of hatred, he has already marked himself almost all over the world as a president who divides and utters shameful words that are already contributing to beatings and acts of vandalism. I hope it doesn't just lead to an increase in suicides, but I know that it will lead to the emigration of wonderful, nice, and good people. And that's all I care about today. I want a person who respects me, to represent me in our country and abroad, not a person who despises me. I cannot agree to hate, to exclusion. Trust me, think about it. Stop for a moment. I don't want you to have to take responsibility for something you really don't want later. It's not too late yet. Give chance a chance, thanks to which happiness will smile not only at me, but also at you.
He's saying, even if I agreed with his policies, I couldn't support someone who promotes hate.
It's like he's drawing a distinction, right, between political ideology and basic human decency.
Yeah, and then comes a surprise.
What's that?
Well, he reveals something that really shows how much this election has impacted his life.
Okay, let's hear it. As you know, I didn't vote for Trzaskowski in the first round. He is not a perfect candidate, but no one is perfect. I am forced to vote for Trzaskowski because I am distraught, terribly afraid that his opponent, Duda, will win, who, together with his party, may contribute to enormous evil, which may even force me to go abroad to save my life. I am so afraid for the future of my country and my destiny that I even joined Rafa Trzaskowski's campaign. I distributed his leaflets, and on behalf of his electoral staff, I want to watch over the Electoral Commission during the counting of votes. It horrified and saddened me very much that I, going from cage to cage, distributed about 500 Trzaskowski newspapers, and here one day I see that Poczta with the hands of postmen, is distributing DUDA leaflets all over Poland. The fight is uneven and dishonest. PiS is doing everything to win, and I, together with millions of people, are afraid for their lives and their future.
So even though he didn't support Trzaskowski at first, Duda's rhetoric, it drove him to not only vote for him, but to campaign for him.
Yeah. That's how worried he is about a Duda victory. He's that afraid of what might happen.
It's a powerful example of fear as a motivator. When people feel threatened, they're more likely to take action, even if it means going against what they normally believe.
And it really highlights the stakes of this election for the LGBTQ plus community in Poland, right?
Yeah.
They're not just fighting for equality, they're fighting for their safety, their right to exist.
Exactly. And that sense of urgency, it comes through in the letter.
Okay, so what leads him to write this letter? What pushes him to finally share all of this with his mother?
Yeah.
Two things contributed to writing this letter. First, maybe not the most important, but important nonetheless. I was inspired by a quote from American motivational speaker Les Brown, who said, "Do it before you're ready, because you'll never be ready if you wait." I waited 10 years and I'm still not ready. For 10 years I lived closed in myself, knowing that I am still afraid to talk about the most beautiful thing that could happen to me. For 10 years, I lived with a secret known only to a handful of friends and me. Secondly, I am writing this letter because I am moved by the recent events I have already mentioned.
He's admitting his fear, right? His struggle to come to terms with who he is, to find the courage to share his truth. But he's also saying that he can't stay silent any longer. The political climate, the urgency of the situation, it pushed him to act.
And it's this dilemma that a lot of LGBTQ plus people face, right?
Hmm.
When to come out, how to come out. It's a deeply personal decision, and there's no right or wrong answer.
But for him, it seems like he just felt like he had to speak out. For himself, for other people facing similar things.
Right. He's saying, Mom, I can't keep this secret anymore. It's tearing me apart. And if my story can help someone else feel less alone, then it's worth the risk.
It takes a lot of courage to do that, especially when you don't know how people will react.
And to really hammer home this point about, well, about living authentically, he includes this quote from Steve Jobs, the
I'm
tech
big
guy.
Sue Job.
One day I also understood how much we, as people, are limited by time and by the opinions of others coming from everywhere. Steve Jobs, one of the founders of the strongest brand in the world, said, "Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't fall into the trap of dogma, living by the opinions of other people. Don't let the noise of other people's opinions drown out your own inner voice. And most importantly, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition." Les Brown would add, "Don't let someone else's opinion become your reality."
Classic Steve Jobs, right? Follow your heart, trust your gut.
And it fits perfectly with what the son is trying to say. Like, life is too short to live by someone else's rules, to conform to expectations that, that don't feel right.
It's a message of self-acceptance. He's encouraging his mother, maybe even himself, to embrace who they are, to trust their instincts.
And then he does something really interesting. He takes us back to his childhood, reminding his mother of the love she felt for him when he was just a baby.
Oh, wow. That's a smart move.
Reading these words, I get motivated to act for a moment. I stop being afraid. I stop being afraid to be myself. And understanding that our existence is not eternal helps me enjoy every second of my life. Our memories have immense power. Only they're able to free us from the limits of time. Do you remember that moment, Mom, when you learned about my heartbeat? Do you remember what you felt when you held me in your arms for the first time? Do you remember my first steps? Or when were you proud of me for the first time? I don't remember that moment when you learned about my existence. But I'm sure that long before you knew my gender, the color of my eyes or hair, long before you even gave me a name, you loved me for one reason: I existed. When you held me in your arms for the first time, the only thing that probably mattered then was that I was your child.
He's appealing to that pure, unconditional love, right? The love a mother feels for her child.
Yeah, before any of the societal stuff, the expectations, even before he had a name.
It's beautiful, really.
Mhm.
He's reminding her that at our core, we are all worthy of love.
And then he uses this foundation of unconditional love to talk about the choices he's made, choices that were influenced by all that societal pressure to conform.
Right, right. Let's hear it.
I was once asked, if you could see your whole life before you from beginning to end, would you like to change anything? Believe me, I would like to change many things. Living in a world full of hatred, aggression, and violence, I would like to belong to the majority and be, as some call it, normal. I would like to get up happily every day, not thinking about whether someone will beat me today or whether I will survive this day. I would like not to think about whether a concentration camp has really been started somewhere in Poland. I'd like to change who I am, but I can't. I tried. My student days are a constant struggle with myself. That's why I experience the most fervent faith, prayers, almost daily masses, frequent confessions, meetings and conversations with priests, pilgrimages during that period. I discovered myself and everything began to fit together. I was terrified when I found out who I am. I also went to a psychologist one day. I guess I was lucky to find one who convinced me that it wasn't my fault or not even my family's fault. Then I learned that my problem stemmed from the fact that I did not accept myself as I am. Lack of self-acceptance caused tension. Imagine you're struggling with having green eyes because you hate yourself for having them, because we've been led to believe that green eyes are sinful, evil. Eventually, you would end up covering your eyes, blindness, or gouging out your own eyes. I hurt myself for something I couldn't change, something I couldn't change. My studies were a time when I realized that I was not like most and never was like the rest, but I was too scared to talk to anyone about it or ask for help. For many years, I didn't say a word about it. I kept imagining that one day everyone, family and friends, would turn their backs on me, that they would kick me out of the house, that the priest in the church I was zealously attending would start scaring his faithful with people like me. This fear accompanies thousands of young people in our country every day. It doesn't go away after a day, a week, or a month. It lasts for years. It never completely disappears.
Wow. He really tried to change, he tried to fit in.
Yeah. He talks about trying to change who he was, like it was as impossible as changing the color of his eyes.
That's a great analogy. It really highlights the pain and futility of self-rejection.
He's saying, Mom, I did everything I could to be what you wanted, what society expected,
Yeah.
but it just wasn't possible.
And he's also highlighting the psychological toll that all this can take, right? Internalized homophobia, the fear of rejection, the pressure to conform, it can really mess with your head.
Yeah, and then he apologizes.
Yeah.
Like he recognizes that this might be a lot for her to take in.
Right. It's like he's saying, I know this might come as a shock.
Okay, so let's hear this part.
Yeah.
Forgive me that this message may come as a shock. I've been getting used to it for 10 years. You find out about it today. But believe me, it wasn't easy. It's hard for me because I can't say it straight to my face, and I used a letter. I'm afraid of everyone's reaction. I'm afraid, and I guess I'll always be afraid until something changes.
He's putting himself in a really vulnerable position, and he's acknowledging the power dynamics at play, especially when it comes to family.
Yeah. It's like he's saying, Mom, I know this is a lot to process. I might need some time to adjust, but please try to understand.
And then he explains why he finally decided to share this truth with her, why he couldn't keep hiding it anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
I could never tell you about myself or the person I love. I am happy and have been dating for 8 years. You would still live knowing only part of me. Human life on the scale of the universe is insignificant, tiny, like a grain of sand. And because we have such a limited time for our existence, we cannot afford to be anything but being our true selves. I can't pretend forever. We are all made of stars. We must shine our own true light before we return to being stardust.
We are all made of stars. We must shine our own true light.
That's beautiful. It's
Yeah.
about embracing who we are, living authentically, shining brightly before our time is up. Yeah. He's saying that hiding his truth, it would be like living a lie, a half-life. And he wants to share his whole self with his mother, to really connect with her.
And that takes courage, to be that open and vulnerable.
And then he gets to the heart of his message, making this powerful declaration.
Okay.
I told you about myself because I wanted you to be a part of my whole life, not just a small part of it or the past. I wanted us to stop living in the past and in falsehood, because as I said, life is not eternal and no one will live life for us. We can live a real life in the present only if we free ourselves from the pain of the past and stop fearing the future, no matter what it may bring. They say that we die when memories of us die, but can we say that we are still alive if we can no longer create these memories?
He's making a connection, between authenticity and being truly alive. Like, if we're hiding who we are, we're not really living.
Yeah. And he's challenging this idea that the past has to control the future. Like we can choose to break free from those old patterns, from those beliefs that are holding us back.
It's about taking ownership of our lives.
Right.
Creating a future that reflects who we truly are.
And then he makes this really heartfelt plea.
Mm-hmm.
This letter is both a cry for help and understanding and an invitation to life. Mom, I know you love me because I love you so much that I can't describe it in words. We never said it out loud either. On the other hand, it's probably so obvious that we may not have needed it. We just felt it. It's so simple. Blood from blood. Tradition, family, community. You don't even need to talk about it. It just is. Above all, I know you love me, but please understand me.
He's acknowledging that love, right? The love they've always shared.
Yeah, but he's also asking for something more. Understanding.
He's saying love without understanding, it's not enough.
And it's a challenge, right, for all of us, not just this mother and son.
Yeah.
How do we reconcile love with difference? How do we make space for understanding when we disagree?
Big questions for sure. And then he asked this really thought-provoking question.
Okay, what is it?
Let's hear it.
Can anyone really say that they love another person if they don't understand them?
Wow. It makes you think, about what it means to really love someone.
Yeah. Like, are we just saying the words?
Yeah.
Or are we actually making an effort to see the world through their eyes?
It's a challenge to go deeper, to move beyond those surface-level expressions of love and really try to understand.
And this leads to his final thought on love and understanding.
Yeah, I'm ready.
With understanding comes love. with love understanding, for hatred and misunderstanding. Even 1,000 reasons to love are not enough. Love doesn't need a single reason to keep loving.
It's about the transformative power of love, right? How it can break down barriers and build bridges of empathy.
Yeah, and he's also pointing out how futile hate and misunderstanding are, like they just lead to more pain, more division.
And then he ends with this beautiful expression of hope. For a moment, I want you to know that I love and understand you with all my heart, and that love and understanding keep my hope alive. I hope that one day you will hug me and accept me for who I am, unconditionally. And I hope that this lonely rock, our planet Earth, rushing through the vast space of the infinite cosmos, will have more such mothers who will embrace their children precisely because they exist. I love you, your son.
It's heartbreaking, but it's also so hopeful. Like, even in the face of all this pain and uncertainty, he still believes in love. He still believes in the possibility of acceptance.
It's a powerful reminder that even when things feel dark, there's always room for hope, for connection, for healing.
It's a universal message, right? It's about the human need to be seen, to be loved for who we are, no matter what.
And it's a challenge to all of us, to examine our own biases, to open our hearts, to create a world where everyone feels safe to be themselves.
It's a powerful letter, for sure.